Good evening, councillors. I now declare the December Agenda Briefing Forum open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. And I now invite Councillor Hung to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bilberman people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respects to the Whadjuk people and elders both past and present.
Thank you. I now draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The purpose of the Agenda Briefing Forum on the screen. And to assist me with the smooth running of our meeting, if you plan on asking a question during public question time, which there are no one in the public gallery, I don't need to read any more of that out. So there are no... We have the following councillors attending electronically with my permission. Can you please confirm your attendance? Councillor Spambrook.
In attendance, Madam Deputy Mayor, is that what we call you?
Just call me Deputy Mayor is fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Barber?
In attendance, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I advise that Councillor Woodall is an apology for this evening. And finally, the Mayor and Councillor Ross are on approved leaves of absence. I would like to remind the Council and the community that tonight's meeting is being live streamed by the City of Melville Council Meeting YouTube channel. It's a day of firsts today. This is the City's first live stream and we would appreciate your patience in the event of any technical difficulties or delays in the stream, and that also goes to me as Deputy Mayor. And it is my great pleasure to announce that the City has been advised today of a $15 million funding commitment for the City's Library and Cultural Centre project. On behalf of the City, I would like to convey the gratitude of the City and its community to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, the Honourable Catherine King, and also to the Member for Tangney, Sam Lim, for their commitment of this funding through the Federal Government's Thriving Suburbs program. And more details on this exciting development and this iconic project will be provided next week. Okay. We now move on to declarations by members. Are there any? Nope, there are none. Oh, hang on. Okay. Declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all the matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting. There are none. And declarations by members who have received and not yet read the elected members' bulletin. And there are none. There have been no approved deputations received for tonight's meeting. And there have been no approved written submissions for tonight's meeting. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are disclosures of interest for this evening?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We've received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Terry Lee in relation to item UP 2454, Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, Further Information Request, Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. Councillor Lee is declaring a proximity interest and has elected to leave the meeting. We have a declaration of interest from Councillor Jane Edinger in relation to item E2457, Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project Lending Facility. Councillor Edinger is declaring a financial interest and will stay and discuss. Councillor Edinger is also declaring an interest in item C24223, P242501, pre-qualified panel for the supply of refurbishment services. Again, Councillor Edinger is declaring a financial interest and in this instance will leave the meeting. Councillor Edinger is also declaring an interest in item C24222, RFT 2503, Men's Shed Refurbishment. This is a financial interest and again Councillor Edinger will leave the meeting. Councillor Wheatland, the Deputy Mayor, is declaring an item and declaring an interest in item 2457, the Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project Lending Facility. Councillor Wheatland is electing to stay and discuss under a financial interest. Thank you.
Are there any further?
Deputy Mayor, I wonder if this will be covered off later, but in light of the notorious to this council determinations in the Keppit matter, we have been advised that where there are financial declarations of interest, it's particularly important to ensure that we have a record of the council's determination allowing people to stay. Will that be dealt with now, or will we deal with that as the items come up?
Head of Governance?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you. So the resolution will be at the council meeting, and the elected members at that time will make the decision whether or not to allow Councillor Edinger and Councillor Wheatland to remain in the room. The ABF is not a decision-making forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Are there any further disclosures from elected members? No, I take it that there are none. Okay. As there are no members of the public in the gallery, there are no public questions, is that? Okay, we will still open public question time. I now open public question time at 18:38. And as there are no public questions for this meeting, I close the public question time at 18:38. Okay, so we'll go straight to item 10 because items 7, 8 and 9 will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council, and there is no business of an urgent nature. The following items have been identified as confidential: CD 24/37, Community Safety Service Review, and will be held to the end of the meeting. Additionally, the following items have been identified as having confidential attachments, and they are C24-226, City of Melville Annual Financial Report 2023 to 2024, C24-222, RFT 242503, Men's Shed Refurbishment, and C24-223, P24501, the pre-qualified panel for the supply of refurbishment services. Now, if elected members wish to discuss any of these items, I will call for a motion to go behind closed doors. Okay, we'll move on to the items for this evening. And we have a really large agenda tonight, so I will request that if elected members have complex questions, that these be sent to the governance inbox by close of business tomorrow, and responses will be included in the ABF business papers on Friday. So item M2441, City of Melville Community Annual Report 2023 to 2024, and there will be no presentations tonight because of the agenda is being so heavy, but we do have Mr Gary Tuffin, Director of Corporate Services, available to take questions on this item and the next. So are there any questions? This is item M24/41, City of Melville Community Annual Report 2023 to 2024. And I take it there are no questions, so we'll move to the next item, which is C24-226, City of Melville Annual Financial Report 2023 to 2024. Are there any questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One very brief question, and again, happy for this to be taken on notice. I note that we have set out the various ratios and financial indicia that we are required to, and we then have this year's figures, last year's figures, the Department of Local Government's target and some comments. I wonder whether it would be possible, assuming this information is available, to also include a column that looks at the sector average, because I wonder whether the DLGC's target might sometimes rather outstrip where the rest of the sector is. And for those looking to make comparisons between the City of Melville and other local governments, it may be more helpful to know where are other local governments as opposed to where the department would like us to be.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Mr Tuffin, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I understand the Department of Local Government's just reinitiated a program to look at the financial health indicators. Previously, that had dropped off for a number of years, so we've recently submitted financial information for the past 3 years. Through that site, you can actually do direct comparisons to other local governments, but I'm not sure, I'd have to take that on notice, whether they actually provide an industry one, and if they do, how recent that is, because that information, as I understand, is still coming in from all local governments.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? No, we'll move to the next item. Thank you. Item C24/229, Council Meeting Schedule for 2025. And we have Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? No, there are no questions. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item. The next item is C24/217, Common Seal, December 2024. Ms Newman, the Head of Governance, is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just wondering if I can have a little bit more information about CS 2241, the restrictive covenant advising of the existence of a restriction on the use of land at number 4 Park Lane, Cardinia. Just wondering what that restriction is.
Thank you. Head of Governance.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'll take that question on notice and provide the information in the business papers.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, there's no other questions. We will move on. Item C24/219, Investment Statements for October 2024. We have Mr Tuffin available to take questions on this item and the next. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And again, the risk of sounding like a broken record, we're once again out of our policy as regards the spread of our investments. In this case, we have 85% of holdings in AA rated holdings, and we are on paper only allowed to have 85. As I understand it, this is after having made some amendments already to our policy limits. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure that there are products in the AAA category that we could be investing in, even if we were able to find them. So I wonder, is there anything that we can do to ensure that we just, it remains a persistent, I guess, difficulty for me that we are more months than not outside the limit of our policy, and that strikes me as the policy needs to change, or something should happen, because we probably shouldn't just be rubber stamping a deviation every month.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr Tuffin, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, I'd concur with those comments. I think we probably need to undertake a review of the policy, because it is very difficult to place those investments. And I guess what's really driving the decision at the moment is just the most competitive rate we can get.
Thank you, Mr Tuffin. Any more questions on that item? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Last week I brought up the case when the auditors came, and how do they pick up if there's any investment which are not in our council's? So I'm just wondering, the answer was last week that the internal auditors will pick it up with the control procedures and all that, but the external auditors were saying that it's not their job. So I'm just wondering, how could we expose ourselves to risk without any sort of check and balances?
Thanks, Councillor Lee. Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Firstly, there's restrictions that we're legislated to follow in terms of we're obligated. In terms of internal processes, a number of processes where we've got separation of duty and a number of authentication processes to ensure that policy is followed. Other than that, it's probably a little difficult to answer other than that we rely on our systems to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Thank you, Mr Tuffin. Councillor Spanbrook?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Director Tuffin, that as a city, it's required to maximise returns on their investment. If the city were to alter their investments to satisfy perhaps some green group, shall I say, is that something that that could potentially happen? Thank you.
Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Council already has a position in place where we target 30% of our investments in green investments, but currently it's proven to be quite difficult and challenging in the current market to find true green investments. We've recently met with a couple of the banks to have that discussion, and they're sort of looking at what products are available or what they might bring to the market. But at the moment, the feedback we had is that they couldn't bring anything that's overly competitive. So if anything, in the current market, we're likely to see that 24% that was reported last month potentially drop lower.
Thank you. Are there any? Councillor Spanbrook?
Deputy Mayor? Thank you. I do have a concern that, that perhaps there may be some pressure from green groups to remove investments from fossil fuel companies, shall we say, or investing companies. So therefore, if you do review it, would that be like early 25 or mid 25? Would there be, a proposed date? So, to be actually looking at that. Thank you.
Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. At this point in time, we hadn't actually set a date. As I said, the target that Council set is 30% as a target for green investments. That the rates we're achieving at the moment sits at 24%, which I think was marginally up from the prior month at 23%. The likelihood of that increasing in the current market is highly unlikely, but happy to review the policy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Tuffin. Yep.
Thank you.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr Tuffin. Look, Councillor Spanbrook, maybe you can email further questions directly to Mr Tuffin. Are there any more questions on this item? No? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Last week, I asked Mr. Tuffin about the AMP investments, which we did invest, but I was told it's a B-grade investment, and the Bank of Queensland is also B-grade. So I'm just wondering, are we comfortable sitting on this high-yielding interest and let it be because we are chasing for high interest, and there's no bank guarantee if the bank is outside the Big Four? Just wondering, what are the steps being taken? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My understanding is the bank guarantee is for the first $250,000 of any deposit. The banks that we have scheduled in that list all provide that guarantee through the program. In relation to AMP, we don't hold any investments with them, as previously advised. Whilst it's on the list, there's currently no investment with them.
Thank you. No further questions on this item? We'll move on. C24/220, Schedule of Accounts paid for October 2024. Are there any questions on this item? Take it there are none. We'll move on. C24/211, Proposed Fencing Local Law. We have Mr Varelis, Director of Planning, available to take question on this item. Are there any questions? As there are no questions, we will move on. Thank you. We'll move on to C24/212, 2022/221, Statements of Financial Activity for October 2024. Again, we have Mr Tuffin, the Director for Corporate Services, available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? No, there are no questions. Thank you. We'll move on. Item number C24/222, RFT 242503, Men's Shed Refurbishment. I advise that this item has confidential attachments. So does anyone wish to discuss the information in the attachments? Oh, hang on. I also advise that Councillor Ettinger has declared a financial interest in this matter, and I now, she's gone, invite Councillor Ettinger to leave the chamber. Thank you. And we have Mr Tuffin, Director Corporate Services, available to take questions on this item. So firstly, does anyone wish to discuss the information in the attachments? No? Beautiful. And does anyone have any questions? No? Thank you. We will move on. Councillor Ettinger. Oh, no, she's got another one. Okay. Item C24/223, P242501, Pre-Qualified Panel for the Supply of Refurbishment Services. Again, this item has a confidential attachment, so does anyone wish to discuss the information in the attachment? Nope, that's great. Councillor Ettinger has also declared a financial interest in this matter and is still out of the room. And are there any questions? No, there are no questions. Thank you. I would now like to invite Councillor Ettinger to return to the meeting. Okay, moving right along. Item number C24/230. Welcome back, Councillor Ettinger. New committee structure, nominations and meeting schedule. We have Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering what the process is going to be in terms of nominating for committees, whether we are going to be doing that during the week or whether that will just happen at the council meeting, and then what format that will take. Is it just a show of hands, or will we go to a vote if there's more than 5 nominees per committee? Thanks.
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you. So there will, I think it's already on the portal, there is a nomination form on the portal. Information will be coming out in the EMB, and so we will ask elected members to nominate prior to the meeting where possible for their preferred committees. We'll collate those, and then if we need to go to a vote during the meeting next week, we will do that.
Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question around how does the deputy get assigned? Because is it getting assigned at random, or do we have to put that on the nomination form as well? Thank you.
Head of Governance.
So generally the deputies are the alternate ward members, but if other people would like to be a deputy, they can nominate to be a deputy as well.
Can I do a follow-up? Because it's going to be, 2 to 1, so that would the alternate be naturally a deputy for whoever's actually in that as a member of the committee as well? So let's say Clive goes for, let's say, governance and policy. Will I naturally be a deputy for those?
Ms Newman.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. If you choose to be, if not, we would look for nominations for other deputies for those positions.
Councillor Barber, and then Councillor Ettinger.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think my question is along the same lines as Councillor Lim. Sorry, pardon me. So it's not a fait accompli that our ward councillor is our deputy. That's my question, yeah.
Ms Newman.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. No, it's not a fait accompli, but if you choose not to or choose to, you can do that. So the nomination forms will come out, and if you just fill in your preferences, and we'll work through those and collate them ready for voting at the OMC next week.
Councillor Ettinger.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Can people nominate for more than one committee? Thank you.
Ms Newman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, you can.
Councillor Robbins?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Might not be the right forum for this question, but just wondering whether at some point we should try and have an informal discussion, and obviously we may not come to an agreement or resolve anything. Not that we can resolve anything anyway, but we may not come to any sort of informal agreement. But I just sort of think maybe with sending in the nomination form where no one else sees what you'd like, you can't see what anyone else's intentions are. I guess I'm just thinking it could get quite messy, whereas if we can just informally discuss and, you know, have a bit of back and forth, it might just make the process a bit easier. I'm just thinking I might not mind whether I go on governance or the policy one, and if someone else feels really strongly about governance, then I might just say, I'm happy to go on the policy one. But without knowing what everyone else is nominating for, we can't have that informal process.
Thanks, Councillor Robbins. There will be an opportunity after this meeting at our briefing for us to have a general discussion about this. But Ms Newman?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. We can actually put it into a feedback section on the portal, and we can update the information as it comes through so everyone can see who's nominating for what, and there is an actual chat section in that where you can put comments.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, there are none. Let's move on. Thank you. Item CD24/33, Council Policy, Child Safety and Wellbeing. And for the next 4 items, we have Ms Pickering, Director of Community Development, available to take questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Hung.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A budget of $30,000 has been allocated for 2025-26 and 2027-28. Is there any estimated cost available for the period following 2028? Thank you.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hung. At this stage, we don't have any estimates on that budget, but we don't expect that there would be a requirement for any further consultancy. The consultancy that we are engaging should be able to be completed in that 2 years within that budget.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? No, there are none. Let's move on. CD24/34, Advocacy Council Policy. Are there any questions? There are no questions. Quite timely to have this come to council next week, considering the win that the City of Melville has just achieved today. So I look forward to hearing that item next week. Let's move on. C24/35, the Aurora and Sabina Parking Station. Are there any questions? Councillor Hung.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there any designated parking bays for visitors in the vicinity of the apartment complex? Thank you.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hung. If I may, I'll take that one on notice and I'll provide you with a written response. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No, there are no further questions. Let's move on. C24/36, Community Safety, CCTV and Technology Initiatives. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just with regards to the CCTV rebate, and in particular option 3 that the officers have provided in the report, it talks about an opt-in pilot project within selected areas. So I'm just interested to know what those areas would be if they've already been determined, and if they haven't been determined, sort of what factors would lead to certain areas being chosen over others. Thanks.
Ms Pickering.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Robbins. We haven't determined those areas as yet, and we're looking at the potential for so the amount of crime statistics within certain areas across the city, and also a general sort of acceptance and willingness to participate in such a program. So they would sort of be the first two things that we would investigate. What we would like to do is bring that back to an EMS with some options for council to consider before we move to the next stage.
Thank you, Ms Pickering. Councillor
Can I
Robbins,
just
follow up?
ask a follow-up? Yeah, thank you. I guess my concern with having like the two different tiers is that the opt-in, the $500 rebate, which is opt-in, is only available if you're in the trial area. So if you don't live in the trial area, then you're only eligible for a maximum $200 rebate. So I guess my question is about the fairness of that, whether we should be providing the same opportunity to all ratepayers.
Ms Pickering?
Thank you again for your question, Councillor Robbins. Yeah, that is correct. It's for the pilot only. So it is the sort of incentive to join the pilot with the view that that would then, we would review how the pilot went and whether that was enough of an incentive and what the people who participated felt about the incentive before we would make recommendations back to council on the rollout across the city if that was to go ahead. I guess, we're trying to sort of limit it to a pilot and keep the costs, limited to that smaller area so that we can really test it first. And I guess that's really why we've come up with that idea.
Councillor Robbins?
Thanks, Ms Pickering. Just one more then. Is there a reason that the pilot can't be available to anyone? Like, why can it not just be like opt-in and, if there's a limitation around the number of residents that can participate, then it's just first in best dressed and we cap it at a certain amount? Like, why does it have to be specific areas? I guess I'm assuming also that it's geographical areas, but you can correct me if I'm wrong there as well.
Ms Pickering?
Thank you again. Yes, it is geographical areas, and the reason why we've limited it to specific areas is to test the technology. Because if we were opening it up to the whole of the city of Melville and we only had, say, 10 people opt in and they were all over the city of Melville, very spread out, we wouldn't be able to test that sort of moving from one house, the burglar or the person who we were tracing, we wouldn't get that effective ability to track them from one house that had opted into the next house. We need them to be in a fairly closely located to each other for that to be able to be tested appropriately.
Thank you, Ms Pickering. Councillor Hung?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The estimated cost for the installation of a three-phase rollout combined plan is approximately $3.9 million. Given its potential to enhance public safety and assist law enforcement, are there any state or federal funding opportunities available to support this initiative?
Ms Pickering?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hung. Yes, from time to time there are often grants available for safety that we feel this program would definitely, or certainly based on previous experience, this program would be eligible for.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No, there are none. Let's move on. Thank you. E2024/56, Morrow Muse Town Square Public Open Space. Budget allocation to progress the project for 24-25. We have Mr McCarthy, Director of Environment and Infrastructure, available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering, when does the office start operating and for how long? And the staff got to be trained enough to help with the streetscape as well, Augerville. So you just can't send anyone there. You need them to be up to speed with quite a few projects. So have you got the right staff to send over to the new place? Thank you.
Mr McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and also Councillor Lee for your question. So we have looked at a resource plan for the temporary office based on the type of activities that are happening down there, and we're looking at placing people in there based on the activity at the time, and it'll probably be a bit of a rotating system, hot desk type of system, where people will be able to go in and operate from that area based on the needs of the individual project. But at the moment, we've got consultation from Morrow Mews public open space site happening at that area. We've also got Ogilvie streetscape upgrade happening in that area, and a range of other projects that, as time goes during the period when it's operating as a temporary office, other staff will be able to go there, town teams, business support, that type of thing.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. In addition to the funds being sought through the Office of Recommendation, the report also talks about a $4.42 million price tag in future years. Is it possible for officers to give us a percentage figure for the amount of the parcel of land that they think would be required for us to develop that so that the public open space can pay for itself?
Mr McCarthy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And
sorry,
your question.
Mr McCarthy. We'll throw to the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Robbins. I think we'll need to take that question on notice because there are quite specific council resolutions about 100% of the site being used for public open space. And so whilst there are certain opportunities for, say, a cafe development potentially on a public open space site, it is quite complex. So we'll get back to you with an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and apologies, Mr McCarthy, for interrupting you. Any further questions on this item? No, there are none. Let's move on. Wonderful. We are up to item E2457, Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project Lending Facility. I advise that Councillor Ettinger and myself have declared a financial interest in this matter. We will remain in the chamber for this forum. And Mr McCarthy is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? No? No questions? We'll move on. UP24/54, Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, further information request from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. I advise that Councillor Lee has declared a proximity interest in this matter, and I now invite Councillor Lee to leave the chambers. And this item was deferred from the 19th of November 2024 ordinary meeting of Council. I note that an advice note has been circulated in relation to an amendment to correct an administrative error, and an amendment has been received from Councillor Barber, which was circulated this afternoon. We have Mr Varellis, Director of Planning, available to take questions on this item, and also we're having a briefing at the end of this meeting tonight where we can ask further questions. So are there any questions now? No, there are none. Thank you. We'll move on. I would like to invite Councillor Lee back into the chamber. Okay. Item UP 24/55, review of LPP 1.4, provision of public art in development proposals. And, excuse me, I advise that Councillor Spanbrook has submitted an alternative motion for this item, and this will be circulated as soon as possible. Has that happened yet? No? No. We have Mr Varellis, Director of Planning, available to take questions on this item. And as we haven't received the alternate motion, there's not really any questions that anyone could ask on it. So we'll move on. I can still ask questions. on the item as the heading.
I can give a brief rundown if you would like, Deputy Mayor.
No, hang on. Just 1 second, please. So sorry, I got confused. There is an item number that you can ask questions on. UPP 2455, review of LPP 1.4, provision of public art in development proposals. So are there any questions on that? Councillor Barber and then Councillor Robbins.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I was going to ask Councillor Spanbrook what her alternative motion was. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah, is that the general consensus in the room? Do we want to find out about that, or has someone got a question on the motion as it stands? No? Okay. Councillor Spanbrook, please. Thank you. Briefly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Barber. With regard to the city is required to, well, currently the city is required to pay 1% of their infrastructure spending over $2 million on public art. At the same time, the private enterprise is also required to pay 1% on infrastructure or development, I should say, over $2 million, 1% as well. However, as the city is not a private enterprise, it's actually a local government, and it relies on ratepayer funds, and the ratepayers are already paying for the actual infrastructure itself. So therefore, I would like to actually make an amendment in the policy to say that it's not required. The city is only encouraged. As an example, Burragoon Leisure Fit, that the development end up costing, I think it might be $9 or $11 million. There's already public art there, and for the city then, or the ratepayer, to have to pay 1% of that development, being 90 or 100,000 on some form of public art. I think that it's an impost on the ratepayer, which adds to it, because they're already paying for.
Sorry, Councillor Spanbrook. Sorry, you've introduced your alternative motion, and I thank you for that. It's not the time now to go into reasons why. So there will be no discussion or questions on this, but thank you for introducing your alternative motion. Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Just wanted to let the governance team know that this item is not listed in the contents page, so it's just a bit hard to navigate to it and find it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Are there any more questions on this item? Not the alternate, on the item. No? Okay, let's move on. I look forward to seeing that motion. Item number UP 24/56, scope and resourcing requirements to progress site planning and development investigations for 67 to 69 Canning Beach Road and 2 Kintail Road, Applecross. And we have Mr Varellis, Director of Planning, at hand for questions on this item and the next. Are there any questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering, when you talk about this planning, do you need to consider there are a lot of residents or few residents along Canning Beach Road which have approached, I think, Councillor Lim and Councillor Ross about their redevelopment proposal? Do we need to consider their sort of proposals at this stage, or we just leave it alone because it will be impacted? Thank you.
Mr Varellis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Lee. The city, as part of any site planning process and investigations, will consider community engagement. And as those prospective concepts develop and impacts are known on adjacent properties, the city will have an engagement strategy to ensure that people that may be impacted are made aware, and any of their concerns can be considered as part of any formulation of the project.
Thank you, Mr Varellis. Are there any more questions? No? Okay, let's move on. We'll move on to item number UP 24/57, proposed reclassification of lots 2674 and 2335 in brackets 4 to 6. Don't know why I said in brackets. Almondbury Road, Ardrostra, public open space to A class reserve. It's a notice of motion. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Green.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. For Director of Planning, essentially on behalf of a resident, Mr Martin Drake, who wasn't able to attend this evening, there seems to be a bit of a grey area with the boundary for some area which is contained within the Civic Centre lot that may arguably need to be considered for Class A reserve or otherwise for conservation. Can Director of Planning confirm that that will be considered?
Mr Varellis.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Green. Through the chair, I will defer to Manager Strategic Planning, Mr Gavin Ponton. He has had a look at this issue and I believe has reached out to Mr Drake as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Varellis. Mr Ponton.
Yes, thank you for the question. The question relates to a difference between the cadastral boundary of the lots adjacent to Wireless Hill and the positioning of a fence which delineates the natural edge of Wireless Hill Park. It's been confirmed that the information in the report and the location plans in the report are correct. They've correctly depicted the cadastral boundaries of the various pieces of land, but the officers are recommending a series of further investigations ahead of consideration of an A-class reserve change, and it would be likely that those investigations can also look at this boundary anomaly. The area concerned is a strip of land adjacent to the driveway that comes off Davey Street. The edge of the fencing along the western boundary of that driveway is probably about 10 to 12 metres in from the actual cadastral boundary where Wireless Hill technically starts, but the land in question in that strip of land is of very high conservation value. There's no real question that anything else would happen with that land, but as I say, there's opportunity through the investigations of A-class reserve to address this anomaly in terms of difference between cadastral boundary and the fencing to Wireless Hill.
Thank you, Mr Ponton. Councillor Green, can you turn your mic off, please? Councillor Ettinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Through you, Mr Ponton, would you be able to supply elected members with a detailed map showing that what you've just been explaining, just so we can clearly understand it for next week? Thank you.
Mr Ponton.
Yes, certainly we can provide that.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, there are no further questions. Let's move on. Councillor Lee, did you have a question? Oh, you forgot. That's okay. Let's move on, shall we?
I've got the question. Oh, Gavin. Thanks for reminding us about the map. Remember the deputations, the two guys came in, they were asking about heritage next to the Wireless Hill. They want to protect that. Is there any overlapping on this? Do you remember? Because they were asking for reserve heritage, for their plot just next to Wireless Hill. I can't picture the actual map.
Thank you. Mr Ponton.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. The map that we're going to provide will probably make this clearer to everyone, but the issue is related in a way to the further investigations of converting two little lots on the edge of Wireless Hill Park to A-class reserve. If we're going to explore that option of converting those two parcels of land to A-class reserve, then while you're doing that, you would rationalise and fix, I suppose, the anomaly in the boundary, and you probably would make the boundary where the fence is around the edge of Wireless Hill Park. So It fits in well with the officer's recommendation that there's a little bit of work to be done to explore a change to A-class reserve, and I think you would tack on the addressing of this boundary anomaly.
Thank you, Mr Ponton. Look forward to seeing the map. It might make it a little bit clearer to everyone. I'm very good with pictures. Thank you. Councillor Green, one last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. For Mr Ponton, just wanting to confirm with you that this boundary anomaly would you consider it to be a fairly sort of common occurrence for these sorts of discrepancies in boundaries to occur when looking at these sorts of matters?
Mr Ponton?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the question. It's not unusual. It's the physical boundary of a piece of bushland differs to the survey cadastral boundary. It's not uncommon. The strip of land in question is not under any threat. It's of high conservation value, and as I say, there's opportunity to resolve the anomaly through recommended investigations.
Thank you, Mr Ponton. There are no more questions. Let's move on. So a motion with notice has been received from Councillor Barber in relation to the intersection of Canning Highway, Rome Road and Hislop Road, which will be distributed by Friday the 6th of December. And also a motion with notice has been received from Councillor Spanbrook in relation to the redevelopment of Leeming Rec Centre, or a new community facility which will be distributed by Friday the 6th of December. Now, there are no motions without previous notice for discussion this evening. We now move on to confidential items for this evening, but I do need to ask, do elected members have any questions in relation to confidential item CD 2437, Community Safety Service Review? As there are no questions, we don't need to go behind closed doors, and we'll turn the page over. And I advise that later item, RFT 242505, supply and remediation of Majestic Boardwalk, will be withdrawn from the agenda. And additionally, there will be a later item from the Governance Committee meeting, which will be held tomorrow evening, and this will be circulated as soon as practicable. We've got to have the meeting first for the late item to be commenced. And for the purposes of the minutes, can the following councillors please confirm they are still in attendance? Councillor Spanbrook. Can't hear you. But I can see you, so it means you're still here. Thank you. And Councillor Barber.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 7:24 p.m. And elected members, there's a briefing directly after this meeting, but this will commence as soon as the meeting is being closed to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama.